Nihilism is the belief that life has no inherent meaning, value, or purpose. It's the philosophical equivalent of staring into the void and realizing the void doesn't care. The word comes from the Latin nihil, meaning nothing. But don't let that scare you. Nihilism isn't just about despair, it's also about opportunity. At some point, we all ask, what's the point? Maybe after a tough breakup, a career setback, or a late-night existential crisis. Nihilism takes that question seriously. But it doesn't just leave us in despair. It forces us to confront the deeper question of how we should live in a world that may not provide easy answers. To understand nihilism, we need to go back to a time when certainty itself was beginning to crack. The 19th century was an era of upheaval. The Industrial Revolution reshaped society. Darwin's theory of evolution changed humanity's special place in the universe, and traditional religious and moral structures were crumbling. This was the world in which Friedrich Nietzsche famously declared, "God is dead, God remains dead, and we have killed him. How shall we comfort ourselves, the murderers of all murderers? What was holiest and mightiest of all that the world has yet owned, has bled to death under our knives. Who will wipe this blood off us?" He didn't mean God literally died. He meant that the belief in a higher power, the foundation of Western morality, was eroding under modernity's weight. Without a divine plan, Nietzsche argued, humanity faced a crisis. If there is no God, what gives our lives meaning? This is where nihilism emerges, not as an answer, but as a looming question mark over everything we once took for granted. Nihilism is often misunderstood as simply meaning despair or hopelessness. But in philosophy, it is a much broader and more complex concept. It is the radical skepticism that questions not only moral values, but also truth, knowledge, and existence itself. The term gained prominence through Friedrich Jacobi, who used it to criticize Enlightenment rationalism, but it was Nietzsche who gave nihilism its most striking formulation. Nietzsche described nihilism as the inevitable consequence of a collapsing value system. When traditional religious and moral frameworks are dismantled, we are left with an unsettling realization. There is no objective purpose to our existence. Nihilism manifests in several forms. Passive nihilism is characterized by resignation and withdrawal, leading to existential paralysis. Active nihilism, on the other hand, is a force of destruction, tearing down old values but paving the way for the creation of new ones. Nietzsche saw the latter as necessary for overcoming nihilism itself. The Russian novelist Ivan Turgenev in Fathers and Sons portrayed nihilism through his character Bazarov, who rejects societal norms and traditions, insisting that all values must be dismantled in favor of pure reason. This reflects the deeper crisis nihilism creates. Without external meaning, we are forced to either succumb to meaninglessness or create meaning ourselves. Dostoevsky also explored the darker consequences of nihilism in Demons, where characters embrace nihilistic ideas to justify violence and destruction. He writes, "For after all, what is man without desires, without will, and without purpose but a stop in an organ pipe, a small organ stop upon which the world plays its tune?" Nihilism isn't just a philosophical abstraction. It has real psychological and social consequences. It can lead to existential dread, moral relativism, and even cultural decay if left unaddressed. However, thinkers like Kierkegaard, Dostoevsky, and Camus sought to answer the problem of nihilism in different ways, offering alternatives to pure despair. Before Nietzsche, Søren Kierkegaard wrestled with the crushing weight of despair. He saw humans strapped between two extremes, our finite existence and our infinite longing for meaning. This tension, he believed, was inescapable. So how do we respond? Kierkegaard's answer was radical: faith. But not blind faith. He called for a leap of faith, an individual choice to believe in something greater despite uncertainty. He wrote, "The greatest hazard of all, losing oneself, can occur very quietly in the world, as if it were nothing at all. No other loss can occur so quietly. Any other loss, an arm, a leg, $5, a wife, etc., is sure to be noticed." For Kierkegaard, faith wasn't about proving God's existence, but about embracing life's paradoxes. Even in the face of meaninglessness, we can choose belief, whatever form that may take. He also noted the importance of subjective experience. The thing is to find a truth which is true for me, to find the idea for which I can live and die. This perspective presents faith not as a dogma, but as a deeply personal, existential commitment. Meanwhile, in Russia, Fyodor Dostoevsky explored nihilism through his characters, many of whom rejected traditional morality, only to suffer the consequences. In The Brothers Karamazov, Ivan Karamazov chillingly declares, "If God does not exist, everything is permitted." This phrase encapsulates a central fear of nihilism. Without absolute moral truths, what stops us from descending into chaos? Dostoevsky dramatized this in Crime and Punishment, where Raskolnikov justifies murder with nihilistic reasoning, but ultimately finds himself consumed by guilt. His message was clear. Without love or connection, to God, to others, we risk losing ourselves entirely. Now we arrive at Albert Camus, the philosopher who didn't just engage with nihilism, but provided the most compelling way forward. Camus saw life as absurd. We crave for meaning, yet the universe offers none. But instead of despairing, he found freedom in this realization. In the myth of Sisyphus, he uses the Greek figure Sisyphus, condemned to roll a boulder uphill for eternity, as a metaphor for human existence. At first glance, Sisyphus seems like a tragic figure, but Camus flips the script. I leave Sisyphus at the foot of the mountain. One always finds one's burden again. But Sisyphus teaches the higher fidelity that negates the gods and raises rocks. He too concludes that all is well. This universe henceforth without a master seems to him neither sterile nor futile. Each atom of that stone, each mineral flake of that knife-filled mountain, in itself forms a world. The struggle itself towards the heights is enough to fill a man's heart. One must imagine Sisyphus happy. Unlike Nietzsche's call to create values or Sartre's radical freedom, Camus offers a more grounded, lived approach to nihilism. It's not about transcending the absurd, it's about living within it, fully and freely. Jean-Paul Sartre took nihilism one step further. Like Nietzsche and Camus, he believed life has no inherent purpose. But he saw this as an opportunity, not a crisis. He famously wrote, "Man is nothing else but what he makes of himself." Such is the first principle of existentialism. In other words, without preordained meaning, we are completely free to define ourselves through our choices. But with that freedom comes responsibility. We can't blame God or fate, we are accountable for who we become. Bringing nihilism into the modern world, Jean Baudrillard argued that we've replaced reality with simulations. In his work Simulacra and Simulation, he claimed that media and consumer culture create a hyper-reality, where symbols and images matter more than real experiences. The apocalypse is finished. Today it is the procession of the neutral, of forms of the neutral and of indifference. All that remains is the fascination for desert-like and indifferent forms, for the very operation of the system that annihilates us. Baudrillard's critique forces us to ask, are we living authentically, or just playing roles in someone else's simulation? From Kierkegaard's leap of faith to Dostoevsky's moral warnings, from Sartre's radical freedom to Baudrillard's critique of modernity, nihilism is more than just despair. It's an invitation to confront life directly. But if one thinker offers the most livable response, it's Camus. If nihilism tells us life has no meaning, Camus responds, so what? Meaning isn't something to be found. It's something we create through our actions, our defiance, and our passion. Maybe Sisyphus isn't just happy. Maybe he's free. Do you see nihilism as a crisis or an opportunity? Let me know in the comments. And if you want more deep dives into philosophy, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss the next one. Thanks for watching.